Hey, it's Adam with the Backpack Theory Podcast, where I unpack past experiences to help define a better future. And today we are going to be unpacking growing pains. Whether you are an entrepreneur or maybe you're someone that has just started a family, maybe a new relationship, maybe you're going through a life transition or a loss. In our life, we always are going to go through moments that are going to be painful and have growing pains. And today, my guest, Robert Baker from Next Generation Roofing here in Oklahoma City, actually in the Next Generation podcast studio, is going to be talking about just that. Rob actually has a roofing company that went from $2.5 million to over $11 million in 2 years. That can create a significant amount of growing pains. Rob is an entrepreneur. He is an innovator. He is also a proud dog father. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. The one thing I didn't mention is you also really lead your organization with a faith-based narrative that is really rooted in a lot of spirituality, which I have so much regard for, especially at your age, where you're at in life. That can be something that's difficult to do. But I want to pivot real quick back to the fact that you are a dog dad. I know that one of your dogs, little Simon, just had a surgery, correct?
He did.
So tell us about that. How's Simon doing?
Well, he had a little bit of a setback, but overall, he's fine. He's under, like 24-hour care right now with my girlfriend. So he had a surgery, and it's called a correctional osteomy. I think I'm saying it correct. But anyways, like, you essentially take the deformity, which for him was his front left leg. So this guy right here, and it was starting to bow out like this. He was looking like the penguin. We decided to go ahead with the surgery because this is, supposedly supposed to add quality years onto the life of your dogs. Because apparently, eventually, what will happen is that leg will start to become very uncomfortable, and he won't even want to run on it.
Interesting.
So what they did is they broke the leg clean in two, and then they reset it and turned it to where his leg now is straight instead of bowed. And then they have a plate with 2 screws. You got sewn back up, and right now he even has a cast over it. So we're just trying to make sure he doesn't run, jump, play, all those things that he wants to do 24/7. That is a monumental task. So we've been giving him, sleep meds and stuff to just keep him calm. And we have him quarantined away from our other dogs, so that way he doesn't, want to go run off the bed. So anyways, that has been a challenge so far, but here in a few months, we'll look back and say we're glad that we did it.
Yeah, dude, it makes a lot of sense. I think it's interesting how whenever it comes to whether you're a cute little adorable puppy dog or whether you're a sales rep for an organization, sometimes you can actually be headed in the wrong direction, and it takes a shepherd to step in and kind of redirect you. You and your organization with this kind of significant growth, I'm sure has run into maybe like the occasional sales rep that just starts going and going and going. Do you have to go in and kind of guide? How do you handle those kinds of personalities whenever it comes to guiding them, but not causing them to lose their fire?
Well, what you mentioned earlier, being a shepherd, I think that that's the key point right there, is that you want to pretty much narrow and focus all that energy into the areas that actually make sense for them to, focus that energy in. You got these guys with all this fire inside them, all this drive, and they just need to know, or they just know that they need to go out there and just put in the hours and go out and get as many contracts as possible. Or, they don't necessarily think about, like, what do I need to do to narrow my focus here? Or how do I be a lot more efficient in this area, right? So our job is to shepherd them into the areas that will allow them to be more efficient, right? Work smarter, not harder. But I mean, to their credit, working hard is not a bad trait, right? Because it starts there. You got to have the drive. If guys come in and they don't want to put in the time, then, there's your first problem. Then if they want to put in the time and they're putting in a lot of time, and you're noticing that maybe they're not as efficient as they could be, that's our job as leaders, to really help hone in and harness that energy into the correct areas. So, so we have, multiple layers of leadership here with our company, and for good reason, because not all the time is just one leader going to be able to have that energy themselves to pour into everyone. So then we have other people that can step in, and we have that continuous layering of thoughts and ideas and support that's being outpoured into our sales staffs, and really not just our sales staff, but like all the other areas of our company that need that shepherding, if you will.
Yeah. And I think that it takes a lot of energy and a lot of spirit to actually pour into those individuals. And sometimes as leaders, it can be so easy to become very drained whenever it comes to your spiritual well.
Yeah.
And I believe that I was actually sitting down having a conversation with you about keeping that spirit filled so that you can pour it into others. And you actually coined the phrase and drew an image, which I thought was absolutely remarkable and brilliant whenever it came to an analogy of being that leader and having that spiritual well. What does Rob Baker do to keep that well full so that he can pour into those people that he's shepherding?
Yeah. So the spiritual well is something I kind of came up with, that you take water out of a well. Well, it's got to be replenished. If it goes barren, if it goes dry, then there's nothing that well could give. And so, if, us as leaders, if we can't give anything, that's to the detriment of ourselves and to the people that we're shepherding, right? So, there's like, I want to say 4 different forms of energy that you really want to try to keep and some people will use this term is they want to keep their cups full. I just like the analogy and the picture of a well, right? Because you're literally lowering down a bucket, and, you have multiple people around the well that's taking from the well.
Hmm.
And so if you're not replenishing it back up, then yes, you're going to feel drained, and then you're going to probably be very inefficient yourselves. Those 4 different forms is you need to make sure that your spiritual well, your physical well, your mental well, and your emotional well are filled up as much as possible at all times. And that's easier said than done, right? Because it's like, well, what exactly does that look like? How do I do those things? For me, let's just start with the first one, your spiritual will. What really inspires you at the end of the day? What keeps you driven? What keeps you, being the best version of yourself? And I'll just kind of go into this very frank, but what did you mention the other day about, 10 years from now, your inner circle is going to help essentially show you who you become.
Mhm.
And so if you feel like your inner circle right now is just not doing you any justice, if they are physically sucking the life form from you, that's going to be a hard mountain to climb regardless right there. So who you spend your time with mostly is going to be very paramount in making sure that your spiritual well is, full, or at the very least, not barren. Other things are, for me, my faith is really big. Men's groups on Tuesday nights. Um, other people that share the same passion and vision, spending time around those people, whether or not that means you go to, church service. And then you have another form, your physical, and that's pretty self-explanatory. For me, it's just making sure that you get getting enough exercise. And maybe that might also mean that, if you're really competitive, if you need to go out and play some golf, do something that exerts some energy, just because there's just so much that you can benefit from any form of exercise. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go to the gym, but, go ride a bike, go on a walk, so something, get the blood pumping. And because if you're just laying around, sitting around all the time, that can cause demotivation right there. So physical. So we've gone over spiritual, physical. Next one is emotional. That might just mean that you need to, as simple as reading a book, as spending time away from other people. If you're an introvert, you're going to need to recharge your battery away from people. And if you don't have enough time away from people, then your battery's never going to get recharged. You're going to get cranky, and you're going to lash out. You're going to be a version of yourself that you don't want to be. But doing things that maybe allow a little bit of a release, allow for you to escape for a little bit, just so that way you can reset. Because sometimes if you're feeling a lot of emotions, you need to go and figure out, sort through what those are instead of lashing out, at people for no reason, just because you're kind of confused. Like, why am I feeling this way? I actually see a therapist every single week.
Mm.
It helps me sort through my emotions, my thoughts, what I'm struggling with. So that way I can be able to better prepare myself each week, but also the people I'm shepherding, right? That they deserve the best version of me.
Mm.
So then that leads us to our last one. So we've gone over spiritual, we've gone over emotional, physical, mental. Same thing. I would probably say that that's, same thing with the emotional well is your mental acuity. If you're not getting enough sleep right there, that's just, your mind's going to feel like mush in the morning. It's in the afternoon, you're going to feel like you have no gas left in the tank. But mental creativity, going in and looking, or actually first, I would probably say listening or watching podcasts, because that kind of presents new ideas being formed in your brain. Because if you're just recircling the same thoughts all the time, then you're not really stretching that muscle. The mind's a muscle as well. And so if you're not stretching it to its full potential, and for me, really that is reading articles and just stuff that really helps me think about, like, what is it that we're actually trying to accomplish, and are we trying to accomplish it the most efficient way, the right way, being open to new ideas. Those 4 forms right there probably are, on any given day, you may be depleted in 4 of those, and you're running on fumes, and you're not doing anything to try to fill that well back up. And so if you're supposed to not only be in charge of yourself and your feelings and your goals, but you have other people to think about, then you're doing yourself a disservice if you're really not paying attention to your needs.
I love that. You have to take care of yourself as a leader, especially whenever
Yeah.
pressure mounts. I mean, dude, you went 400% growth is absolutely astronomical
It's
in
insane.
any business. And the amount of just grace that you've extended. And you said something that I really, really, really want to touch on. I know that Craig Rochelle is really someone that you quote a lot, someone that you look up to from a spiritual aspect as well as a leadership aspect. And you mentioned his podcast multiple times whenever it comes to doing group trainings and talking about biblical references. And he's got a great quote in relation to where you said leaders have to be open to new ideas. And there's this quote: people would rather follow a leader that is real than one that is always right.
Yeah.
And how do you, as Rob Baker, how do you navigate when to be real and when to be right?
Well, let me first just say that there's no secret sauce to it. It's more of just like a spiritual change within yourself, because it's really easy to come in and have a lot of success and develop a huge amount of arrogance and self-importance. And then if that's unchecked, then that can get wild, and that can lead to a downfall just right there, because then you have people who look to you and they start to say, well, it's just about him. It's not about us anymore. I talk about you-centered leadership versus me-centered leadership. So back to your question, really being real versus being right. Being right is about me. Being real is when to know when you can just be vulnerable and say, listen, yeah, guys, I was wrong about that. I'm glad you brought that up to my attention. Let's go ahead and fix this. Let's go ahead and identify, discuss, and solve.
Yeah.
So being real is just knowing that you're not always going to be right. And it's okay to be vulnerable and to show people that, you don't know everything all the time. So it's just kind of a huge spiritual and philosophy change within yourself, where you do make it about other people's voices, not just yourself, right? You're not up there just to love hearing yourself talk. So I really do like to invite opinions and new ideas and change, because sometimes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But that doesn't apply to everything. Just because it's not broke doesn't mean that we can't do it more efficiently, because with growth, you need more efficiency.
I love that. You do need more efficiency. And part of being more efficient is asking more questions, being more curious whenever it comes to the people you're working with, not always being right.
Yeah.
and allowing them to make their own decisions ultimately ends up manifesting more efficiency long term. Because if you sit there and you try to control everything and you try to always be right, there's no area for growth. And I just looked up the average stats. Did you know that in the United States, the average company only grows by 8 to 10% per year? And you had a 400% growth. That is unheard of. And one of the big things that I think you exude that I would love to hear you talk about is the fact that in Matthew 20, verse 26, Jesus says the words, "It shall not be so among you, but whoever be great among you must be your servant." How do you, Robert Baker, lead with that servanthood attitude?
Again, it's all kind of comes back to you-centered leadership versus me-centered, and leading with inspiration. And servanthood is just, you have to just kind of come into the workplace with the mentality that, what can I do to help the people around me, which in turn will help me? So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone, as opposed to only focusing on the stone, which is yourself. And when that happens, you start to kind of see it come back around to you. You get other people with that trickle down effect doing the same thing. And if you have your company structure on tiered structure or military style structure where you have all these levels of leadership, you need that to trickle down. You need to have it's not about me anymore, which in our line of work, it is very easy to have a lot of those. I'm not going to say self-centered because it's not as cut and dry as that, but they just have not been a part of a true collaborative partnership style company before, where it's like their actions need to be thought about in terms of, what does this do? What are the implications for everybody else? It's not about just me anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't think it just stops at the top. It's everybody below, because there's always going to be a butterfly effect from everything you do.
Yeah. And I think that it's interesting you say that, because I think so many times whenever people look at someone like yourself, if they're a young person aspiring, want to be an entrepreneur, they look at it and they go like, dude, I mean, I know me for years. I looked at the people and I was like, man, I mean, it's got to be awesome to be that person. Like, it's got to be just so awesome to have that much control. And I have actually learned that the greatest leaders actually learn to relinquish control more and more and trust the people they're with. How do you build that level of trust within your leadership?
That's kind of a trap question, right? Because there's not supposed to be like this equation or anything like that. You just have to go and trust them. You just have to. You have to go and let them, prove to you that they are not someone you can trust. So giving them the benefit of the doubt, and because you can try to find all the ways in the world to see like whether or not they are someone we need to give that control up to. And you could be not releasing that control for a long time. And so again, that slows progress as well. Right. And so why do we do that? Why do we prevent ourselves from doing it? It's out of fear. And just like we were talking about in yesterday's segment about fear, is that is a huge roadblock into growth. So if I'm going to give you control, if I'm going to really, what I like to say is relinquish authority, right? Not relinquish and tasks, because authority and tasks are two different things. Tasks are like those people are going to come back to every single day asking for tasks. If I just relinquish authority to you over said tasks, then again, what's that going to do? Inspire them, because then they feel like they do have more control instead of just being a order taker. And that inspiration then again allows you to have more breathing room. You're not meeting with them as often. And then, maybe your quarterly meeting, you look back and say, hey, let's look at and see what happened with me giving you the deadlines and tasks and authority over this. So at that point, you're going to look back and see whether or not you made a good decision or not. So it's kind of just like a different way of going about things, instead of like you're analyzing, is this person right for me to promote to this position? delegate this authority to, just do it.
Just do it. Just let go.
Yeah.
There's only two ways you can live, right? You can live in faith or you can live in fear. You can't really live in between. I think we were talking yesterday, whenever it came to, you can be lukewarm, but if you're in lukewarm water, that's where bacteria grows. That's where mosquitoes will grow. That's where the worst things grow. You need to be hot or you need to be cold. So sometimes you just got to take that leap of faith and just really walk away from that fear. And I think that whenever it comes to junior entrepreneurs, whenever it comes to people that want to get in business, there's that fear factor. And so if you were going to give advice to the younger Robert Baker, whenever it comes to becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a business owner, what would you tell younger Robert that he should have faith in areas where maybe he was fearful?
I think there's two different ways to approach that question, because first of all, I probably wouldn't change anything that I did before leading up to now, because all those trials, tribulations I needed. But if I would have maybe saved myself a little bit of time getting here, I probably would have said, don't be so analytical all the time. And don't be afraid to take a leap of faith and also let go of control, right? The more we control things, the less progress is made, right? Fear is the enemy of progress.
What is the big thing that you would tell yourself? Not to be as hard on yourself, not to be as scared of growth, not to be so concerned when it came to what other people thought about you? Like, what would the thing be that you would tell yourself, or even someone else that's thinking about launching an entrepreneur journey?
I think it's don't be afraid of growth. I think that is the number one thing, because again, yesterday's segment, we talked about, like, I wasn't even like, I had thoughts about owning a company. And I think I was just comfortable being comfortable for a while. But I think what was sorely lacking in that was just my own inspiration. Everybody wants to know what their true calling is in theory. Like, they think that they know, they think they know that they want to know what their true calling is. But I think a lot of people are afraid to find out what that is.
Yeah, because I think that fear can just go so many different directions. Like, whenever God puts a significant calling on your life and God tells you, hey, listen, I need you to be a leader. I need you to step into this. I need you to take on the responsibility. There can be that little imposter syndrome, that little tinge of doubt that can be created in the back of your mind that tells you you're not good enough. You don't deserve it. There's no way you could ever do it with who you were. Have you ever battled those kind of voices in your head?
Oh yeah. And I still do. But I think I just let that drive me, because a little bit of myself is like, I am a little bit battling the part of me that does tell me in the back of my mind that, maybe slow down, maybe think about this, maybe just know, like, hey, the percentages of that actually happening are very great, or, like a whole bunch of these like feelings of doubt. Because again, when you are like a shepherd and you have authority and you have responsibility over people, that is a little bit of a fearful, thought right there. I think inaction is more or less the major evil. If you're going to tell yourself all these things and let yourself continue to believe them, then yes, you're not going to go anywhere.
Follow-up question. When do you feel like God called you to be a leader?
I want to say this was a couple of years ago, whenever I decided to have a conversation with my partner about buying him out. Because I wasn't going to do that unless I knew I was going to go a different direction with the company. Because he started it and I came aboard as a co-owner, and the way that he wanted to, the direction he wanted to take it initially, I knew that if I was going to come and actually do this, because I got back into the industry, I had a little bit of a break from the industry, actually there for about a year and a half, sort of like Rob Gronkowski did with the Patriots,
It's a good analogy.
And then I came back and decided I want to win a Super Bowl, right? And that's kind of when I decided when I made my first hire after I was, selling by myself for a while just to accrue some capital. And when I decided to bring him on, I was like, what is it that really has held me back? I've had past employers that have mentioned that, oh, you probably don't want to do this because this is too much work. This is too much strain, too much stress, too much of this, and this. And I think that kind of played a part into it. And maybe they just weren't seeing like the beauty in the middle, in the storms of what was happening, about the change that was happening with some of the people that they were shepherding. So yeah, I think that was when I decided that, okay, it's time for me to put my boxing gloves on and let's go fight.
I love that too.
Let's actually start this journey.
You went all in. You took all the chips, you put it on the table, and you went on in. And you've done that ever since then. And the amount that you invest in your people, I mean, just creating this podcast studio and like making it available to the leadership in your company, and just really looking for ways to increase your culture, just the contests you have, the amount that you give out whenever it comes to bonuses, the events that you take people to. You really work on fostering just a beautiful environment to where people can thrive. And I love that. I mean, one would argue that in the society we live in today, that we're such a profit-driven society. It's profit, profit, profit. And it seems to me, based off of the word success, Robert Baker has a different definition of success. If you were going to break that word down, what would your definition of success be?
It's not just about me. If you make it about you, where it's top heavy, and people will notice that too. Like they'll sniff that out right away. Ultimately, they don't want to be a part of an organization like that. So that's one way. That's one angle, just right there. Other angle is, what's your why? And you know about that, because if you don't have a real why, then you're going to run out of gas, and so are the people below you. But profit is important, but not at the expense of other important things. If you can get that same amount of profit by having other things be more important, firsthand, then guess what? That's a win-win-win. So why wouldn't you want everybody to win?
Yeah. So
why not?
Yeah. Why not?
I mean, what is your why if that is not the reason you're doing this? So, and it's not to call out other people. It's just, if their goal is to make a lot of profit and to continue that for years and years and decades, then if you just want to look at it analytically and not emotionally or spiritually, then that would also make sense too. So putting everybody first and, letting it see that that's really going to pay dividends. It's just the way we we want to treat our clients as well, is that, we choose a great name over great riches. And in doing so, a great name will lead to great riches. It's just about, what do you put first? You put the correct thing first, the thing that you're really after as well will come after that. So, and I'm just kind of using this, I'm saying these things just for one size fits all for everyone. Because again, everyone's why is different. But if you kind of took the one thing that's constant, is that everybody wants a successful business for a long time, unless I'm missing something. I don't know. So it's just your approach. And I think I've just had a lot of people in my life that has helped lead me to these correct decisions. So I am glad. Here's another thing I probably would have told my younger self: don't rush getting into being an owner. Like it's, once you decide that you do want to be an owner though, that's where it's like, okay, don't feel like you need to be very slow about it.
Right.
But if you're not ready to, then that's okay. If you feel like your approach isn't going to be the approach that you want, if you don't feel like you're going to be a true shepherd, then maybe figure out what your why is first, and then decide that you want to continue with that journey.
Yeah, I love that, man. I really do. Yes. And the whole why thing, I really, you brought me in to help consult whenever it comes to the company, work with people one-on-one, and you really put an emphasis on people finding that purpose beyond profit. And one of my favorite books by Robin Sharma is A Leader with No Title. And in that book, he tells these different stories of these different characters that aren't the owners, they're not the CEOs, but they are the best at what they do in the organization that they're in, because they take ownership over that position. It's not always about the title. It's not always about being the owner. It's if you become the best and you take ownership over whatever your position that you are in right now, that is what will ultimately manifest into figuring out if you wanted to start your own company or wanted to grow that. Because I mean, from our conversation, it doesn't seem like you always wanted to own your own roofing company. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, who knows? Like if I had been with a company that was set up the way we have here, I might have been with it for a long time.
Mm.
I feel like I maybe became one out of necessity or just because I felt like I needed to. Like I think my why at first was just like, well, I don't think there's anywhere else that I could go that I'd want to be at.
Hmm.
So let me try it. Let me try and do this thing. And then what happened though is that became way more than that as time passed. So my why has changed, and I think that that's okay too, and that it's evolved. And I think that a lot of people here, it's going to evolve for them as well. So, um, but no, we're very very fortunate to have you come aboard and be able to really foster and mentor, and also be a steward for that as well. Because again, I only have so many hours in the day. This podcast right here helps me to be able to relay my sentiments and again force multiply and not out to just our employees, but anybody else that out there that's thinking about doing the leap or maybe even wants to join our company. You know, that's I like to let people know exactly what they're getting into before they just take that leap. But I think that having you aboard has allowed more intentional one-on-one time with these people in their development. I think that there's not enough gratitude I've expressed so far about that, and I'll continue to keep saying thank you. But I think that that is something that a lot of other owners should think about as well, especially in sales driven cultures, is your mental health of your employees are going to be very important, right? Especially the ones that help bring in revenue. So
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Rob. And I'll tell you, dude, one thing that I really appreciate whenever it comes to the way you handle your organization is the investment you make in your people, not just from a financial perspective, but also from a personal perspective. I mean, you've got quite the organization. I mean, the way that you have everything set up, like you've got a customer service representative, you've got guys that go out and basically meet field adjusters for your sales reps. You've got a canvassing department, you've got sales reps, you do the back end work whenever it comes to insurance claims. You've got an operations department, you've got the install department, you've got your admin department. I mean, you have an entire ship that is fully equipped. Is that a model that you had seen before, or is that just a model that you wanted to bring to the table to really equip your people that are in the organization to excel?
the model is sort of similar to what I've seen before, but we have added components to it that we've either tweaked to make some of the other departments that I've seen before more efficient. I even added like more departments that were never there as well that I've seen before that I feel like have also succeeded. There's also been some new wrinkles that we've tried too that we've quickly taken back because we're like, nope, good initial thought, but nope. But we're not afraid to try them. So yeah, I think having people who are really good at their craft heading those different departments is, I think, the one thing that's really helped unlock our true potential.
Hmm. Speaking of true potential, you do have a lot of guys that come in here. And I mean, if you've never been in sales before and you've never been in roofing sales, especially in Oklahoma, I'm just going to tell you something right now. You could very easily change your entire life overnight, and you could literally leave whatever job you're in. And if you put in the effort in, you could literally make anywhere from 100 to $500,000 a year, 100,000 to $500,000 a year overnight. And no, I'm not kidding. There's a reason that sales produces the most millionaires. That's not some fake number. I mean, I myself have done high level sales, and you can definitely make really, really good money. Now, with that being stated, you know, coming in and being a 22 to 25-year-old guy, and you start making six figures can come with a lot of pitfalls and a lot of issues. Did you ever run into that whenever it came to your sales career coming up?
Yes, but I think I was left unchecked I didn't have very good mentors at that age, or my inner circle wasn't probably like the most motivating or, um, best for me in terms of letting my ego or my arrogance go unchecked. And so I think that, that is a huge trap you can fall into. You start making a lot of money really fast, success really fast, and you can really start to think that you are, you are the shit. But I think we've got, our leadership here is, we have it set up to where nobody's ever going to feel like they're more important than anybody else.
Mm.
Now they might think that, inside sometimes, just because again, really fast meteoric success can foster that type of thinking with people. But I think that we've got a lot of really level-headed leadership here that again pours into our guys, and they don't see their leaders behaving that way. So then in return, they're not then thinking that it's okay for them to think and act that way as well.
Right.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
About that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, mentorship is really important, especially young, because you're so moldable at that age. But yeah, I would have been enthralled if I was, when I started, I was 23 years old. So 13 years ago. And yeah, I would have been enthralled if I came into a company like this. And who knows, I may still be here 13 years later too, just because I feel like there is a lot of growth and there's a lot of support out there for that growth.
Speaking of which, if you're going to look out there and talk to someone and tell them why they should get into the roofing industry, whether they be in the Midwest or whatever they may be, why would you tell someone, if they've never thought about it or they've never done it, why they should get into the roofing industry?
A lot of good reasons. And if you're okay with living in a state like Oklahoma, hey, that's your first win. This is an industry that is always going to be around. Like, there is recession proof. Insurance companies are the entities footing the build. Insurance companies are one of the most profitable entities in the world. And just because they pay out a lot of claims, maybe here in Oklahoma, think about all the other states that they don't pay out claims in, that they're just collecting, those monthly checks in. And so since they're never going to go anywhere, and let's just say something meteoric happened over like the entire lower half of the United States, and all claims are have to be paid out. Well, then you have the Federal Reserve and FEMA and all that stuff that, would be paying, out claims. So that being said, on one hand, you have that. On the other hand, weather here in Oklahoma, it's just like Thanos, inevitable, right? Inevitable. Like, it's not going anywhere. Okay. So those two things combined, and living here in Oklahoma too, you don't have a high cost of living. So, what you make versus what you have to really spend is a great ratio. I feel like I'm also trying to tell people why it's good to live here in Oklahoma.
Hey, I love Oklahoma, dude. Oklahoma is one of the fastest growing cities in the country.
It is.
Its cost of living is great.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to the food, it's getting a lot better. We got our good friend Chris Murray here. That's actually in the studio. He's right over here. You can't see him, but he's like right that maybe you can't see him, but we're waiting. Hey, Chris. Hey, Chris. Hi. Hi. By the way, Chris is like the content creator master. This dude has been doing marketing in Oklahoma City forever. If you ever come to Oklahoma City and you want to figure out where to eat, Chris literally, I don't know how he does it. It's like every new restaurant, Chris magically knows about where it's at. And then he's got his little Chewini with him that he takes with him and takes these adorable pictures. So
he's also the podcast sensei.
No, he is the podcast sensei as well. We got way off topic, but there are a lot of good reasons to move to Oklahoma. But really, like, whenever it comes to the roofing industry, there's a lot of potential there. Also, the fact that you're literally helping people protect their most valuable asset, right?
Yeah. When we break it down, when it comes to their property, a roof, it is arguably their most important asset. If I need to spell it out to people, and the reason why that is because all your valuables are underneath it. Your babies, your dogs, your pictures, your safes, your everything, right? So if your roof is in bad shape and that goes unchecked, and let's say you have a claim that you should have filed, but you didn't. You have 2 years to file the claim. And if you don't file it within that 2 years, then you get some major leaks coming through. Then you are SOL because you cannot file a claim. And here in Oklahoma, you have to absolutely pounce on filing claims because there are a lot of people who have really bad roofs who don't get weather like we do down here to allow for the chance for the insurance company to pay for it in the first place. So I would say people here are very fortunate in terms of, yes, I mean, weather is not ideal. Tornadoes are scary. Hails can be scary, but your insurance company's paying for all of it. People who live way up in, the northern part of the lower 48 who don't get any hail or tornadoes or anything like that, they have to pay out of pocket for their roofs. So, but anyways, that's
Yeah. I mean, you're literally covering their house. I had a question. Why next generation roofing, by the way? What is the drive behind that?
well, here's the thing. My partner actually made the company, like he formed the company and he named it Next Generation Roofing and Construction.
Yes.
I just decided to actually shorten it. But I actually bought the name, along with the company from it. Cause I actually believe that next generation is just kind of like an approach and a way of thinking about how do we constantly evolve and how do we constantly get better and be more efficient. And the cherry on top too, is that you hear that phrase everywhere, Home Depot, the next generation of home doers, or I think it's something along those lines. There's a country radio station. It's like the next generation of country. You hear that phrase everywhere. And so just by, pure marketing standpoint, hearing that phrase just in people's minds just make it seem very familiar, very comfortable, very, I'm getting my roof done by Next Generation Roofing, not I'm getting my roof done by Baker Roofing. Who's Baker Roofing? Never heard of them.
Right.
So anyways, there's kind of like I think a marketing strategy there. There's a, I think it kind of goes down to like our core values, what we believe in. We want to always stay ahead of the curves, competition. So the next generation is really, it makes sense.
I love that. It's really good, Rom. And I mean, dude, I just want to congratulate you again on your rapid growth, on just the amount of pains that I've seen personally you go through, just the amount of overcoming you've done and the amount of tenacity and motivation is just truly speaks to you, this company. I can't wait to see where this company goes. Again, thank you so much for sponsoring my podcast, building out the studio and giving me an opportunity to be able to, work with you and your people. And dude, I just can't wait to see just the meteoric rise of Robert Baker, Next Generation, and what ends up happening. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
In closing, I've got 2 questions for you. If there was a book that you would recommend to someone that is thinking about getting into business and can help them with growing pains, what would that book be and why?
Well, there's a couple. Think and Grow Rich is a good one. Another one is, and I'm currently reading it.
Don't you love that? In the middle of the book and then like the name, you just lose it. I do that all the time.
I think I told you this the other day what it was.
Hey, don't look at me. Don't look at me. I don't have that great memory. Ladies and gentlemen, for this short commercial break, we just want to give a shout out to Content Gym, the creator of your content, the next generation of content to be created. And we are working with Content Gym in collaboration with the Next Generation Collaboration Station, which we're sitting in right now. And our good friend Christopher Murray of, yes, the Murray family, that is a epic patriarchy in the Oklahoma environment where his father was on the news and everything. He is actually the mastermind, him and a gentleman named Drake, behind the Content Gym. And so to get your reps in, ladies and gentlemen, get in the gym, create your content, and create a brighter and better future. Now, back right here at Collaboration Station. And now, back to the program as scheduled. So, Rob, we were talking about your book that you're currently reading. What was that book?
Good to Great.
Good to Great.
Talks about how companies that essentially took that leap from good to great, great being that they not only found success, but they had continued success for a long time. So Good to Great and Think and Grow Rich, those are two right there.
I love that. It's good. Thank you for both of those suggestions. Second question, if there was one person in your life that you could identify that really has transformed you and helped you through growing pains, who would that person be and why?
Well, man, you asked me to name one person. Well, really, you know, this is kind of cheating, but it's not even a person. I would say God. I mean, he is the ultimate teacher, you know, and Jesus in the flesh, he was the ultimate teacher to his disciples. But if I'm not going to cheat and use that, I think I would have to probably say my father, my dad. And the reason why is my path, he never really owned a company, but he was always grounded in reality. And he always was supportive of anything and everything I did though, too.
Mm.
And he always wanted me to find my own way instead of doing things for me. And so I think that was the most important thing for me growing up, was that I needed to find my own strengths and not just rely on other people's strengths. Because there's a difference between when you are struggling and you need to lean on people, but using that as a crutch, you're never going to grow up that way. You're never going to spread your wings and fly. And so for my dad, like his presence in my life has always been like, he's my dad, he's my friend, he's someone I can always go to and have a very grounded conversation, and keeps me grounded. So that way, again, finding all the success, which I can't really attain that just to myself. We've got an amazing staff here at Next Generation Music. The key is not just people, but the right people.
Mm.
So I would say that is the most important thing you take away from, the people aspect is, don't just try and find as many people as possible and have like this revolving door. And, the way that you pay and treat them is being like somebody that I decided, hey, this needs to be my mentor. I think that his presence in my life is, even though he can't really just say, hey, this is what I did with my business, X, Y, Z. It's just more so believing in me and keeping me grounded and helping me remember the most important things about life in general, and not losing, myself in, stuff that just at the end of the day is not as important. And I think we all know what those things are.
I love that. So good, Rob. So good. In 60 seconds, if you're going to look to that camp and there was someone sitting out there who's like, wow, what an impactful story. I want to take that leap of faith. I want to stop living in fear. And you're going to tell them what they could do to take that leap of faith, regardless of the growing pains. What would that be if you were going to tell that person?
If you feel like you kind of have a whole bunch of chains on you right now and you feel like you're weighed down by, debt and people telling you that you're not good enough, or things have happened in your past that have really questioned whether or not you're good enough for, leading a company or being a good husband, a father, mother, sister, all the above, all those negative thoughts and emotions. You just need to know that that doesn't apply to today. You can literally carve out a new path today if you want to. And so just knowing that, breaking free of those bonds and literally just seeing what you're capable of, what you're made of, that always is going to be way better than any inaction that you can take. Inaction is going to be the death of the journey that you want to take, right? Because we all have these thoughts and grandiose dreams. Making those dreams a reality is overcoming fear and living your life and your business life by faith.
I love that. Rob, thank you so much again for coming on. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for the insight. And from the Next Generation Collaboration Station, until next time, we'll see you.
We'll see.